Welcome to the Blonde Runner podcast with Coach Laura Erickson, where she shares her healthy living tips as a running and triathlon coach and mother of 4.
Hello, and welcome back to the podcast. I am so excited about the guest that I have on today and wanted to do an introduction before I connect with her. Her name is Carraway. She is a convert to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. She is a writer. She's a multi-award-winning international speaker and author of the best-selling books, Wildly Optimistic, More Than a Tattooed Mormon, My Dear Little One, that's her new one, Cheers to Eternity, and Finding Yourself in the New Testament. She has spent the last 12 years traveling worldwide, inspiring others of her conversion and faith through difficult times, as well as either by bus or boat. She does guided church history tours. Her passion is to tell everyone that happiness exists, and it comes from the gospel of Jesus Christ, that he's real, and how to find and love him in the hard, in the unwanted, and in the unexpected. Because through it all, with God, we have every reason to be wildly optimistic. After decades, she's spent time in Arizona and Utah, and now she is living with her husband, Ben, and her 3 kids, and they are back where she was raised, which is New York. So I'm super excited to have her on, and we're going to be talking about spiritual health today. Hello. How are you, Al?
I'm doing great. Can you hear me? Are good things happening?
I can hear you. So,
awesome.
First, I just want to tell you how absolutely excited I am that you're on my podcast, because if I think of a spiritual, healthy person, I would definitely, you're the first one that comes to my mind. So
thank you.
Yes. You just ooze positivity and hope and encouragement. And I think that you are a light to a lot of people. And I know you've been for me, because I follow you on social media, and I'm definitely gonna let people know where they can follow you, and we'll drop the handle below. But I just love kind of your beaming optimism, and I think people need that. So thank you.
Thank you. So nice of you. Thank you.
You're so welcome. I'm so grateful you're taking the time. I know you just kind of finished your tour, and I know you have a new book out, and we're definitely going to talk about that. So hopefully you have a few minutes to find some peace and all that. I know travel is kind of hard. So
oh my gosh, yes. Accumulatively, I've been gone, for a whole month, and I just barely got back a few days ago. It's been a little bit of a whirlwind,
I would say. Where were you last?
So I just came back from Utah. So I live in New York. I just came back from Utah for my book release tour. So I was out there for 5-6 days. But then before that, I was gone for 2 weeks, and I had 2 buses of people, and I was a church history tour guide, and we went all over.
That was so fun.
So I was home for 2 days, and then I left again for another week. And so 3.5 weeks I've been gone.
Your life is crazy, no doubt, with all of that. And can you imagine even 15 years ago that your life would be like it is now?
No. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
No, not even last year. Last year I was just what am I supposed to be working on and working towards? Because if you don't have your personal passions and projects, you just sort of feel like you're floating in the wind. And so I'm okay, I'm in a new season. What is this season? And how can I maximize that? And then there was a lot of sewing. S-O-W, sewing, a lot of sewing, S-O-W. And now I'm finally, after years, I feel like I'm in the reaping stage of my sewing.
Oh, I love that.
But it took me a while to get here. But yeah, I'm not usually that busy. They all just happen to happen at the same time.
That's when it rains, it pours, right?
Yeah.
But no, you definitely been a light, like I said, to so many people. And today, this is a healthy living podcast, and my background is in coaching. So I do running and triathlon coaching, and I work a lot with people on their physical health. But for me, and I think for
good, help me with my terrible heel striking. Just kidding.
I probably could help you there. I would totally. Next time you're in Utah, look me up. But definitely I think that to be a well-rounded individual, I think it's important to look at all the facets of health. And that's why today I really wanted to focus on the spiritual aspect of health, because while there is a physical component, there's emotional component, there's a lot of components to health,
Mm-hmm.
but spiritual it's not quite as tangible. I think sometimes it's harder to grasp, but I thought, I really wanted to explore this because I think it's so valuable for people.
Yeah.
In your mind, like, how would you define spiritual health?
Well, that's a good question. I don't it depends. It depends on how you kind of like package it. But if there were like a phrase motto of how I kind of live around that, is just paying attention and acting on like these good reoccurring thoughts. My rule of thumb, as it has been for over a decade, is if something comes back to me more than once, like, I'm gonna do it. I almost feel like it's just like my soul living within me, like pulling me to this life that I didn't even know could exist, like one that's just more vibrant than I would have picked for myself. And so that's kind of been my driving force, is paying attention and taking a chance on my good reoccurring thoughts. And that's where like the best fruit has come from for me in my life.
Would you kind of call that like a gut feeling, or would you call that like a higher power giving you
Oh,
gut?
100% a higher power, but yeah. But you could, I mean, if you wanted to attribute it to your gut, I think it's like your soul living within you. And if you want to name it your gut, you can do that too. But I think it's my spirit in me that just is, yeah, connected to God, more in tune than I could recognize. And it's just sort of pulling me in new ways and in different ways. And mostly like unexpected and uncharted and even unwanted paths, but they
Mhm.
have better fruit.
Yeah, more than you can see. Like, I mean, when you were talking, that thought popped into my mind that, like, even if somebody's listening in and maybe they don't believe in God, or maybe they don't understand this higher power, they don't recognize it, or maybe they do, and maybe it's a little different than you and I understand. But I think everyone on this planet has this light of Christ within them, so they have that. If it's, you want to call it a gut feeling or whatever, but right and wrong, regardless of your upbringing, of, if you were in a religious situation or not, you're going to have kind of that light within you, right? Would you agree?
Yeah.
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 So tell us a little more. I mean, I have read some of your books, so, but not everybody knows you as well as maybe I do, or the people that follow you. Tell us a little more about your upbringing.
My upbringing, I am from New York. I am a typical stubborn New Yorker. I do not need help from anyone or anything, right? And I'm just like, how we were raised is, there's like little to no, I don't remember any emphasis on marriage or family or being a mother or any of this. It was like, what are you going to do with your life? How
Uh,
are you going to take care of yourself? I mean, even since like kindergarten, what are you going to be when you grow up? How can you make it out there? Like, that's just how I was raised. And so everything around me was just people pursuing. And so that's kind of like ingrained into my veins. Just
mhm,
pursue a path of pursuit
mhm.
to do something. It's always about doing something. So being my stubborn New Yorker, I just did whatever I wanted. And I like to think that I channeled that in a good way. But then at the age of 21, already graduated college, living on my own, all of these things, uh, it was kind of interrupted and challenged by, um, I don't know, just like these teenage boys that lived a life of spirituality, something that I didn't care about, nor did I think I was lacking in any way. I
Mhm.
always thought of it as some sort of like mental comfort for people who needed that to make them feel good, or if they were struggling. And I'm like, that's not me. So I so I tried to like show them a different way of life. Like, you could do whatever you want. And then in my awkward, terrible efforts to prove them wrong, I was shown greater things.
Mhm.
And so that has just put me on this path of seeing what else.
Mhm.
So that also, I mean, into my 20s, moved across to the West. I'm back in New York now, but I spent a while, probably about a decade in the West between Arizona and Utah. And I started, public speaking blossomed, and that's been a 12-year thing. And I've been in like 5 different countries doing that. And now I have like 8 books out doing those things. And so all of these things I never would have picked for myself, but they have come along the way. It's almost as like what I would attribute to God knowing me more than I know myself, and giving me exactly what I want, but packaged completely different than what I would have picked.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I imagined you would be, I mean, you are naturally an optimistic person, no doubt. I mean, I think before even this spiritual awakening that you had, per se, I guess if you'd want to call it that, you were probably pretty optimistic. Wouldn't you agree? Or
Yeah, but you know what I would phrase it as? Because I think people hear optimism and they think maybe even a little ignorance, or it doesn't mean that you're happy all the time. Like that's not
yeah.
me at all. I struggle a lot. I feel like I'm this magnet to trials. All that nothing goes smoothly in my life. Sometimes
Yeah.
people are like, "Oh, it's right if it falls into place." I'm like, if
Mm,
something's fallen into place, I should run the other direction, because that's just not happens to me. But what I just feel like a lot of that, I'm just stubborn, but that could, I'm too stubborn to live a bad life. And so that doesn't mean ignorance or blindness to reality. I think it just means that I try to be productive instead of destructive.
mm,
And so what I have learned to help with that, it's kind of like if I'm in the middle of something falling apart, which everything does. I've lost my family, years of silence from my family because of spiritual choices, religious choices that I've made that
mm,
they didn't understand.
mm.
Years of silence came from that. Years of unemployment, bad pregnancy where I almost lost my life, like so many things. We were houseless because of doing what we thought God wanted us to do. It led to us not getting a house we bought, and we were houseless. All of these things, but how do I be productive and not destructive?
Mhm.
And that is there another way to look at it?
Yeah.
100% there is. What
Yeah.
am I missing?
Mhm.
I may be in a hard season right now, but seasons don't last forever, but they all bring forth new fruit, new blossoms.
Yeah.
Am I seeing them? And I do think a lot of it, finishing my thought from 2 minutes ago,
Does it?
it all comes down to self-love, stubbornness and self-love. I mean, we're all allowed to feel upset and
Mm,
angry, mad at God even, or lonely or confused or really just broken and empty. But I feel like it's up to us to choose whether or not to live there.
mhm,
And I feel like I have put in the work and the time with myself to
mhm,
become stubborn enough to not accept it. Like I can feel that, but I don't want to live there.
mm,
And so that's when I start asking questions of, what am I missing? What's a different way to look at it? What does my next step look like, even if that step is small? Because for me, I'm not going to go out and do all of these bad things.
mhm,
But I feel like what's most destructive to me is standing still.
mm.
Not doing anything bad, but not doing anything at all.
Yeah. Oh, I love
So,
that. I love
yeah.
it. You really are moving. You either moving forward or moving back. I think you're right. You have to be moving. If you're still, I mean, there's a complacence. I think we get in a comfort zone often, and that I like that you're continuing to bring up this concept of stubborn, because stubborn could also mean stall, or if you're holding, you're not going. You're going to be stubborn. Stubborn in some ways is very good. Like we
Yeah.
believe in what we believe, and we're not going to be moved, and that's a different thing than
It
you know,
could be a healthy tether when you learn to work with it.
yeah.
But I've learned that, small steps are still steps. Slow steps are still steps, and those are honored, and they are magnified.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, what does my next step look like, even if that step is small? How can I keep moving forward? How can I see my season through? How can I allow God to be God? How can I have my soul continue to pull me in new ways and in different ways? Or really, a really important question, or a good starting place is self-love. Like, how do you see yourself? You know what
Don't
I mean?
don't you feel like you're, this concept of spirituality? I mean, for me, it is beyond myself, and I think that it gives me like a groundedness and this life purpose, and then this inspiration to be like that forgiving, kind. Like I have more to me, and that I can't think really boils down to my feeling of my own self worth. That's I'm more
Mhm.
than just my mistakes or things like that. Um,
You will be more or less tolerant to the right things and better things when it comes down to self-love. You can set the right boundaries and healthy boundaries with life and with people and with opportunities to really channel this more vibrant and blossoming life. I feel like is within reach for every single person, no matter what season or path you're on.
I like that. Recently I posted something and I talked about this. You know, I'm sure you've heard this before. Kindness begins with me. It's something we hear in the church. We hear, a lot, and I always thought about it as kindness begins with me being nice to everyone else. And
But except you.
older, wise, I've realized that kindness begins with me loving myself, because
Yes.
it's really hard to love and care for others when you don't like yourself. And this is a journey. It is something that takes practice and work to become more kind to yourself. And I think it really boils down to forgiving yourself and forgiving your flaws. And we live within our flaws, and you've talked about your challenges. And so how would you say we can get over that? We can
Yeah.
forgive.
So like, oh, cute, Elle, that you love yourself, but how do we get there?
That
You know,
people and
I I can you hear me? Did I
yeah.
break up? Okay, okay. I feel like I've always kind of loved myself. I've always given myself self-love and grace and from as long as I can remember, but I also feel like I can track that back to um I just I've always spent time with myself. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like you can't love someone you don't know.
Hmm.
And that could be God. You can't how can you really love him and trust him if you don't really know him and spend time with him? I don't know. But that goes, relationships, yourself. Can you love someone you don't really know? Well, how do you have to spend time with yourself.
Hmm.
You have to give yourself time alone to do new things, to say yes a little more and to get ready naked, like spend as much time as you possibly can naked.
Which
Uh yes. Like I don't yeah.
people are
Spend
like, yes, I don't like clothes. They're feeling free right now.
Yes, take them off. There's this funny meme I saw a few days ago. It's like you either are the naked neighbor or you have a naked neighbor. I'm like, I'm the naked neighbor. That's me.
That's hilarious.
But I
But
also oh, go ahead.
being raw with yourself, I think, is what you're saying, is like being honest with yourself. And I will say I like myself too. I like me, and I've always been sort of an optimistic person. I think it kind of runs through with optimistic people. They tend to, I feel like, yeah, I'm still a work in progress, but like genuinely I know my heart, and I know that God judges me on my own heart, and I know me. And so if everyone knew everything about everyone else, maybe they would be more kind, graceful. But I like that you're saying, I mean, we spend time with ourselves because we live with ourselves, but like spending time with ourselves in the raw form of really, and allowing ourselves grace. Like, how do you, maybe someone listening in that struggles with that, how would you guide them, or tell them, how can you be a little bit more raw with yourself, and how can you learn to like forgive yourself?
I feel like opposing forces live and exploit in in all of that. And so for me, how to be productive and not destructive is recognizing how are you thinking? How are you talking to yourself? Because I believe that all good is God, including feelings.
Mm.
But so on the flip side, and this is how I'm more productive, is how am I talking to myself? How am I viewing myself and my efforts? Because if they are not good, I can recognize if it is not good, it is not God, which means it is not truth, it is not reality. And the faster that I could recognize that, the faster I'm able to adjust my course and adjust my perspective and shift, allow a shift. So if I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. Why bother? Like, my efforts are in vain. I'm pleading for things to be over and things to be different. That's not good. Then I can be like, wait, that's not truth. That's not reality. Because even if I need to change and shift, God would never do it in that way. He would never articulate it in that way, because that is not how he communicates.
Yeah.
And so just taking a step back and recognizing, how am I viewing things? How am I talking to myself? If it is not good, it's not truth, it's not reality. And so that shift, but I don't know what you asked me. Maybe I answered it.
You did. I like the kind of recurring theme that you keep bringing up, which is this, being productive, not destructive.
Yes.
And I like that you mentioned self-talk. This is something I've talked to others about too. Really, it does come down to, what are you telling yourself? Because you'll believe the story you're telling yourself. So if you want to have a different story, you need to tell yourself, give yourself a different script. And I like that concept also. I think you were kind of reaching that, or saying that good defines bad. Like, we're going to have bad.
Oh yeah.
But what you're saying is to recognize that maybe that negativity, that there's two things pulling at you all the time, and it's good and bad. And so you've got to determine, hey, am I going to listen to this voice, or am I going to listen to this voice? And there's one, the positive, the encouraging, the hopeful voice is the one I think we want to hear, or we want to listen to. And sometimes it's very quiet and it's a very still, small voice that we have to listen to, but it's there if we want to follow that.
When I first moved to Utah, this was, oh my gosh, like 12 years ago now. For those who don't know what I look like, I'm just like covered in tattoos.
Yeah.
And I moved to a place where that doesn't really exist. Definitely not, 13 years ago.
Yeah.
Not in the place where I ended up. And man, the way they reacted and treated me was just disgusting.
Yeah.
Like it, and it took me months to figure out how I was supposed to react to it. You catch me on a bad day, and I'm like, I got to a point where, like, I don't have enough left in me to even go to the grocery store, because I couldn't handle the remarks and the stares. And it was like, I was set up to fail before I had even started. And you think of this poster child for the LDS church. Do you picture me like some young girl covered in tattoos? No, it's like I was failing before I started. No one wanted to date me. People looked at me like I didn't even belong in their grocery store, in their neighborhood. And to feel rejected and unwanted and unfit and unworthy before I had even done anything.
That's
like hard. Yeah. And so after a few months, I'm like, wait, I don't like this. I don't like this. Wait, this isn't how I want things to be going. So if I can't change other people, what can I change? And so, I remind myself often, like, wait, like, I'm here. Like, I have a heart that is beating and a God that is mine, and I am only here once, and I refuse to let someone else change my life. I refuse to let someone else pick my life for me. Like, I am not living for you. I am not living for other people. Like, how you think and how you react absolutely is not going to stand in the way for me being happy and living a life of great purpose and great passion. And so the question I get asked the most, because I have 3 kids, and as we started out, like, I have my hands in a lot of things, and they're all like a lot of personal things.
Yeah.
Like writing books, that's something that takes up a lot of my personal, like, one-on-one time. That's not a family thing. Well,
Yeah.
it affects your family, but that is something that I am personally choosing to do with myself.
Mhm.
Being a church history tour guide for 2, you know what I mean? These things. And so traveling and speaking, I'm a public speaker. Well, how do you do that? How do you feel comfortable doing that? What about your kids?
Mhm.
And so I always will respond, you know, oh my gosh, what a huge disservice
Mhm.
I would be doing if I didn't do those things in front of my kids.
Mhm.
Because what is that teaching people and what do people believe right now? And that is that they are secondary in their own lives. And that is
Mhm. Mhm.
the biggest paralyzing lie that anyone could live, and they do.
Mhm.
And most people do. You you are not secondary in your own life. You deserve your time too. And I want to teach my kids by showing them that whatever it is that sets your soul on fire, like you are deserving to do that. Yes, do those things. The things that are important to you are important to
Um,
do. Like you have to, you should. If not, we're missing the point. And so do I feel guilty? No, like not at all. Like I
like,
want this is it's intentional.
well, I mean, and I love what you're saying here because, like, I know in my realm of work, when you do Ironman and things like that, it takes a lot of time and training away. But I've always told my kids I'm a much happier mom because I go out and run. Trust me.
Yeah,
You
yes.
want me to go out and run because you don't want to see all the mess. It's like my run therapy, I like need it. And I think that what you're saying is so valuable because we do kind of forget ourselves in life. And I think that that is a big component of being healthy is remembering who we are. And there's sort of I was funny because I just interviewed my daughter about like not giving up, and I asked her what she thought passion meant, and we sort of had a little discussion on this. And I thought, if I were to pick out like what you're very passionate, I think, about like your story and what that self-love I can see, which is so valuable and so important for people to understand. I think there's with spiritual health, there's more to us than just what meets the eye, right? There's like this beyond our self purpose, and I think
Mhm.
your passion ties in, right? For me, my passion is to coach and help, and I love to work with people on their health and getting them healthier and meeting their goals, their physical goals. But like I can see your passion is definitely a spiritual one, and like it oozes out of you. It's nothing that it's beyond your own, your the strength is like beyond your own. I don't know how to explain it, but I think that definitely ties into something beyond us. And that's where I think spiritual health ties in. Would you agree with that?
Yes, and you know what's beautiful is just like the more we say yes to ourselves and yes to these recurring ideas and yes to things being packaged differently, I just feel like, oh my gosh, life is this endless self-discovery.
Mm,
And life is just continuously blossoming when we say yes a little more, mostly to ourselves.
mhm.
Because I mean, how much of this am I like just barely discovering in my mid-30s?
Mm,
You know what I mean? And what new thing had you just barely like grown into? And you're at what age? You know what I mean? It's just
yeah.
like you're not ever gonna stop. And what you choose to do now is not gonna determine the rest of your life. Like new seasons are coming and new self-discoveries will blossom and it's so exciting. I think people forget what a thrill it is to live by faith and to take those steps.
I think, and just like allow yourself to embrace the passion. They say let your light shine. I mean, let it, like whatever you have inside you. That's kind of like me for what I do is like I've loved helping people with this stuff forever. Like I've coached for 27 years. So for me, like I will do it till I die because it's just passion for. But I can't imagine my life without that kind of passion or that it
Yes.
the depth to my soul. And it's like I said, it's more than just like a physical thing. It's like a calling to me. It's kind of like
Yes.
passion. And I would say that you have the same, and it kind of, I never imagined my life to be doing this either, but like you don't know where, and I've done some, lecturing and things like that as well as you have, and it's like you never really imagined that, but you go with the flow, and you like carpe diem, right? As things come, you go with that gut feeling, or you go with what's come, and you make the best of whatever's coming in front of you.
Yes.
Or,
See your seasons through.
yeah.
Act on your reoccurring thoughts. Know and learn that you are deserving of the time to pursue. And if you don't know what any of this is, it's like, what reoccurring thought am I ignoring? Do you know what sets your soul on fire? Like, what makes you feel filled? If you don't know that, that's a good starting question. What makes you feel filled?
Yeah.
And are we doing it?
Let's talk about this. I like that question. It kind of brought to mind this concept of the difference between like happiness, and I know happiness is something you've talked about, and then joy. Like, because to me, like, I am truly joyful. Like when I have helped someone accomplish a goal that they didn't, that would have been difficult to do on their own. Like that is true joy. I mean, get a text and they've just like accomplished their goal. Like it makes me completely, like, joy is like, happiness is one thing, but joy is like a whole new level of happiness. And I think when you find a calling, or you find something that you are passionate about, it kind of gives a lens to that joy, right?
Yes.
Wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
So people are, I know that some people may be listening and they're like, I don't really know my passion. Like, what step to step idea would you give them? How can they find this passion? Like you and I have found passions. Of course, it's obvious, right? But others don't find it quite as easily. How can we help them?
Well, what makes you happy?
Yeah.
What new things can you try?
New things. That's good.
I absolutely do new things. Last year, me and my husband were like, let's just like do something different. Let's just do something really, really hard just to see if we can do it. And you know what we chose? Running. Am I a runner? I'm not. Have I run much? I mean, I played soccer back in my youth, but other than that, so last year in our 30s, we decided we're just gonna pick up running, if one could do that, and we ended up running. I ran 5 races in 4 months.
Yay for you.
And that is something that I will continue to lean into and continue to do. And it's like, oh my gosh, if that was just on a whim, like, let's just try it. Like, and that grew into like this great driving force of physical, and anyways, and even spiritual. Like my best thinking is done when I'm running.
Oh, I hear my best ideas come
when you're running. Yeah. And so it's like, oh my gosh. And that just came from the most random, like out of nowhere, left field thought that I'm like, why? Yeah. Like, why wouldn't I try that? Like,
Yeah.
why wouldn't I? Yeah. Why wouldn't I try it?
No, I love that people listening in, like, of course I'm all about running and give it a try, right? And I don't think it's not ever too late to find running. I've helped people in their 60s learn how to run, so like it can happen. But I love that thought of like, maybe you have this recurring thought of trying something. Maybe it's not jumping out of a plane. Maybe you're not talking about that, but we're talking about like trying, even if you have a fleeting thought of, let me try that. Maybe I could try it.
Yeah, I've always wanted to try that. It's like, okay, well, you can. Literally no one but you is stopping you.
Yeah. We get in our own way, don't we, so many times. So
yeah, and that just goes back to self-love. Like, no, I'm not secondary. This is my only life that I'm only living once. Like, absolutely, I'm going to do it. Like, why? So, like, I move a lot. I am almost not quite 2 years in the house that I'm in now, and this will be the longest I've ever lived somewhere in almost 19 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So I've lived on my own, no roommates since I was like 17. Anyway, so we lived in New York several years ago, and then we moved away. Mm-hmm. And then when we moved away, Ben and I, my husband, we would talk all the time about like how close we were to so many things. We're within just a few couple hours to like so many different states, everything. There's so much upstate. And it bugged us because we didn't know if we'd live here again. And it bugged us because it's like, why didn't we do those things? And we could not come up with a single reason to why we couldn't do X, Y, and Z when we lived in New York. Mm-hmm. Zero. And it ate away at my soul because there was not one real reason of why we didn't. We just didn't. And so we ended up moving back
And
to New York, obviously.
you
And
didn't.
like
It's too convenient. It's too easy. Sometimes we look for the harder thing, right? Maybe.
last year was our first full summer back in New York.
Mhm.
And we went somewhere new every single week for 3 months, like just day trips, even just 3 hours in a new direction just to see what new food we could find. Like it doesn't have to be this big. We don't have money. We don't have a lot of money. We're poor, broke, but happy. But like like day trips even, you know, new highways. And it's just why wouldn't we do those things? And I hated that, you know, that we don't. And I couldn't put my thumb on why. And so I just what happens when we're dying?
Yeah.
And you'll be like, well, why didn't I?
Yeah.
You know?
Don't live with regrets, right? I love that you're talking about this concept that I often teach as a life coach about living intentionally. Like
Yes.
saying, you know, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to set my sails and, you know, dead fish go with the flow, right? But if your sails, you can figure out where you want to go in life. And I think, you know, when we give up our power and say, here, you know, everyone decide for me, like kind of your epiphany of, hey, I'm not going to let people judge me on what I look like and determine how I'm going to feel about myself. You decided, no, I'm going to determine this is only one life to live.
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
a life.
Why would you let someone else pick your own life? And you know what? I also okay. My best advice to offer is like don't listen too much on other people's advice.
Yeah.
It's like you know because like when I was trying to go, I was trying to do something. I was trying to go somewhere for the first time, and almost pretty much every single person was like, okay, so it's gonna be like super weird. You're probably gonna like be really uncomfortable, and this is what's gonna happen, and you're gonna feel this way. And I went and I did it, and I'm like, that was the greatest thing I've ever done. Like
No
I
different than
could not pick, and everyone told me otherwise. And I just like I signed up for a half marathon last year, and I was talking to this lady. She's like, I hate that one. I will never do that one again. And she was telling me all the reasons why. And that literally was my favorite one I had ever done. Like, and so it's like, stop letting other people dictate your decisions. You are not them. You are completely different. And so, like, fine, listen if you want, but don't. You know what I mean?
yeah, encourage.
Also,
Because, well, and I think that's fine. Everyone has their perspective. It's important to be open minded, but at the same time, sometimes we put more trust in what other people say to us than we do in our own self. We
yeah. Why?
like, yeah. I love that you said that because everybody has their different perspective on why they like a race or not a race. And part of it probably depends on how you were feeling and how you did well. If you're barfing and stuff, it may not be your most.
Yeah, I mean, for those of you who are runners, it's just like, man, there's this race. It's called the Lakeside. You run around, you know, the side of the beach. In theory, it sounds beautiful, but it is so, I mean, a whole race flat in the middle of nowhere. It's like that is painful, but some people love that because it's flat and they can get their best time. But I wanted to rip my eyeballs out the whole time. You know what I mean?
It's all relative.
So yeah, so life.
But I love all the different things that you're saying. I think this is so valuable for people to hear. One of the things that you posted recently, and I did want to talk about this, I just loved it. It really spoke to me. And, you know, I think we all have these moments where we're judged and maybe judged out of context. And I know for you, you didn't always really like that title of Tattooed Mormon for that book because it's kind of like, I don't know, you know?
Yeah.
That's hard for you. But
Irrelevant.
the quote that
Completely irrelevant.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. The quote I wanted to bring up was the only one that was qualified to throw a stone didn't. That just caught my eye when you posted that because I just thought, truth, that is the truth. The only one that could throw a stone. And you kind of talked about that woman that was caught in adultery and everything
Yes.
happened with her. And I really loved what you had to say because we don't always understand the context. We often judge by, you know, obviously when you came to Utah and everybody was judging you because, well, 12 years ago, it was very different than now. Like everyone has tattoos now, even, you know, but like it's very different 12 years ago for you. And so being judged just on what you look like and how difficult and how I mean, the whole concept is being kind, right? Not only to ourselves, but others. And so sometimes we get judged and maybe misjudged, and people don't understand everything. So, what are your thoughts on that? Judging.
Well, oh, I mean, well, that just goes back to, I mean, self-love and healthy boundaries. Know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. Like,
Okay.
people judging me. Does it still happen?
Yeah. Well,
Probably, I'm sure. But do
yeah.
I notice it and do I recognize it? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
And so what changed? People or me?
Yeah.
Well, I did.
Yeah.
And so yeah, do people still look at me awful and say things under their breath and even to my face and in my DMs? Absolutely. But I'm different, and so I'm equipped to better handle that, and that is being secure in myself and secure in how God sees me. Like the woman caught in adultery, I what people may not know about me is I am a biblical scripture history context buff. Like I like it just I love all of that.
Mm-hmm.
What I do in my spare time is learning about ancient Israel and Jewish tradition back in the days of Jesus. And I talk to rabbis. Like, I love that. I know almost too much around all these things. And that particular story, I won't go down too far, but like what's happening right before then is very much that it was just like a planned it was just planned to try and trap him, to arrest him. And like doubting Thomas, he was an apostle.
Mm-hmm.
And he was one of great faith, like as years as an apostle of Jesus that walked with him in Jesus' days. He was the one that was brave enough to say, shouldn't we die with him? He was ready to do that. And yet in the one moment that he asked a very logical question that we dub as doubt, we put this box around him and we call him Doubting Thomas from this one little blip in time. Kind of like this woman in adultery who very likely wasn't even part of what we think it was. And we dub her and we define her by this one little blip in time.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just like, and kind of like me with this awful nickname of Tattooed Mormon, this irrelevant nickname that has nothing to do with except this one little story that I shared, a blip in time from 13 years ago. It's just like that lady, we don't know who she is in the scriptures, but we know scripturally that she led a life that magnified God.
Mm-hmm.
And so like she had so much life left in her.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't doubt that it wasn't that it was beautiful and it was vibrant and it was blossoming, because once God becomes a reality to you, life will undoubtedly change you. And so God, he becomes real to me. And once he becomes real to you by spending time with him, by seeing your seasons through, by allowing him to intervene with the unexpected and the unwanted and the uncharted, he, like everything else, it's just in the weeds. So yes, judgment of others, but once he's real to you, and once you have this anchor and tethered to yourself and to him, like everything else is just small marbles in the weeds, and you don't have time for that. You keep on living, and you live for you and you live for him, and it will be, you will stand all amazed that you will be able to navigate all of those little things, because you will see how little they truly are.
Mm-hmm.
You have new seasons ahead of you, and they are beautiful and they are blossoming, and other people can't change that. I mean, the only qualifying factor any of us need to a blossoming, beautiful, vibrant life, you already have, and you cannot change, and that is, you are his. This is me getting super spiritual, but no matter what you do, you are his, and that cannot change, and that already and always makes you deserving, simply because you are his, and everything else is just noise.
I love that. That is a message people need to hear often, I think.
Yes
You don't, no matter what you do or don't do, not that life doesn't matter and that our choices don't matter, but you still belong no matter what. the right to be respected and cared and loved just because you exist, not for anything you've done or not done. You have
Yeah.
deserve that.
And that always goes to, so now what voices am I going to listen to? Because those negative, untrue, unrealistic, and unhealthy voices will tell you, like, well, what if I'm the exception? I fail and I fall and I wonder and I wander, and it's like, why would he ever want to be yoked with someone like me? But that is not good. So that is not God. That is not truth. That's not reality. Like a baby being born.
Yeah.
And you hold your baby for the first time and you look down at it, and you are just so overwhelmed with love with that baby. And it wasn't because the baby did anything to earn that love. It was simply and overwhelmingly there because it was theirs. And that is exactly how God views you right now, even with your missteps and sidesteps, that you are deserving because you are his, and you don't need to do anything to earn. You are deserving because you are his. And so, that woman caught in adultery, the world, other people will say, stone her to death. She deserves it. And what does he do? He gets on her level, in the dirt with her. He calls her by the same exact endearing term that he calls his own mother, woman. That is in term of endearment that he calls his own mom. So he gets in the dirt with you, spends time with you. He talks to you and he listens to you. And he does not cast the stone, nor does he go on this long, sermon of self-improvement. And it's just, he is so willing to forgive and give you something more and something better, because that is why he chose to die, to give you these opportunities. And so anything else, that is the adversary exploiting you. And so, just to shift a perspective, the God that you believe in, the savior that you have, is one who gets in the dirt with you, stays with you, listens to you, drops the stones, and gives you more chances, because everything he does is to get you back and give you everything.
Absolutely. I love that. I think it's so important to define those thoughts coming your way. Are they truth? Are they bringing you up? Are they tearing you down? Because obviously you're wanting to listen to the ones that are encouraging and lifting. And I love that you say he's willing to get in the dirt, because I've seen that in my life. He's not going to just leave you just because you're imperfect. I mean, we are expected to make mistakes. We're here to be tested, to be tried, and that's how we learn. I mean, when I ask, my athletes, what have you learned? Whenever they talk about things that they've learned, it's always been a hard race. It's been a hard situation. It wasn't the easy times that they learn from. It's the hard times that we learn from, and we make us better. And it's like we're rocks being tumbled down this river, and we have to be polished, and we have to have our hard edges softened, and it hurts, and we're tumbling, but that's how we get polished, is the hard stuff. So
Yeah.
it's absolutely. And then there is that light, that gospel of Christ. And those listening in, if you truly want to understand or learn more about that, I think, and then maybe that's a reoccurring thought that Alice talked about, is learning and understanding and seeing if there's more for you, and having that understanding of what is Jesus Christ about. Because it's just like learning about ourselves. You learn to love yourself by spending time with yourself and allowing yourself to be raw and real. Same with, if you don't understand Christ or you don't understand God, you probably haven't spent the time to. You can't love someone if you don't spend the time, on understanding them and their life and the things that they've accomplished or done. And I think it's the same. It's true. You have to spend the time with them. I love, love, love everything you've said. I think that it gives us a lot of food for thought, a lot of things to think about when it comes to spiritual health and what to do. Do you have any other words that you wanted to share, or any other thoughts that you wanted to share?
I think my word vomit will suffice for now.
I do want to read your books a little bit because you just have this power about you, and I think that this was a God-given talent for you to be able to like share this spiritual uplifting for people because your word vomit is very encouraging, and I think it's great, and I think you have this authenticity about you. You're real. You have challenges. You're not saying that life is perfect because you've put this spiritual component in your life, and but it's also very relatable, like your life, you're a mom, you're real, and I love that about you. But I do want to talk about your books because I think this helps other people to learn about things that maybe they need to have their mind opened and understand. So you have in the intro I did talk about your books, which is Wildly Optimistic, More Than a Tattooed Mormon. You have this new book that you've done, My Dear Little One. Tell us about that one.
Oh, okay. My unexpected yes. So More Than Tattooed Mormon, that's all about my life falling apart because I got baptized. So that's more of like a conversion story, whatever. Wildly Optimistic is my personal favorite. It's everything that we feel during trials. The entire thing is trials and everything that has gone wrong in my life and how to learn of it, shift of perspective. I did one on marriage and dating, and then I wrote one on the Bible coming out in a month. Now I mentioned that because it just makes my dear little one a little bit more something to laugh at. I spent 8 months, sun up and sundown, writing a book about the Bible and the history of the New Testament, and that was obviously a huge labor of love.
Mhm.
And then last year in September, my youngest turned 2 at the time. And I just, as a writer, you're always writing. I just wrote her something. What I said is bullet points to my soul
Mhm.
that I wanted my own child to know. And I gave it to her for her birthday. Now, as far as my religion goes, my family they're not. It's me. You know what I mean? And so when they read these bullet points of my soul, they cried.
Mm.
They were, I don't know, it was, and so I wrote it in about a half hour
Mhm.
in one sitting. And so I sent it to my publishers just to see if they wanted, I don't know, something. And I spend so much time making these big books that have so many different things that are important, and that are good and that are bestsellers within my Christian umbrella. But then this came,
Mm.
and yeah, in one sitting did it just go nuts. It went nuts, and for a few weeks I was number one in 8 different categories on Amazon. I beat out Jimmy Fallon for like a few weeks. Like
Wow.
it turned into this huge deal, and I just got back from my book tour, which I wasn't even going to go on for a kid's book. It was just going to be something I did, but it was a whole tour that I traveled and was gone for about a week for, and I see these women in their 70s and in their 60s and in their 40s coming to me crying saying, had I lived my life around this book, my life would have been beautifully different. And so that has been the most unexpected blossom that I am able to see through right now, which is just so crazy. It's the whole thing is just crazy to me.
I love it. Well, I think sometimes simple is best, like
Yes. Yeah.
bullet points, it just speaks to, because it really is, in essence, simple. I think sometimes we overcomplicate life and we overcomplicate everything, and we just need to be simple. And so sometimes maybe that's what that was received so well because it's simple. It's
Yeah.
not complicated, and a child can understand it. And I think a child can understand the love of Christ and understand that spiritual component or tap into that. You think about children and how they're so tapped into that spiritual component. Often we get lost in this world, like everything, all these voices and everything. We lose that simplicity. So maybe that's part of what made that so popular.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, congratulations on all your success. I'm so thrilled that you were willing to talk to me and be on this podcast. And I really appreciate your insight into spiritual components of health. I think it's something that can't be neglected. I think if you want to be a well rounded person, you do need to think about all these different aspects. And if you want to be grounded, if you want to have more dimension to your life, you need to explore this option of spiritual health. And I think that's something that would definitely value. I think it provides some value. But I really, really do appreciate you, and let's continue to stay connected.
Deal. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Well, have an amazing day.
Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye. Thank you again for listening in to the podcast. I wanted to encourage you to like and subscribe, and please share this so others are learning about it so we can continue growing it. You can also find me on Instagram at The Blonde Runner, and that's BLONDE with an E on there. And you can also find me on Instagram at Coach Laura Erickson, and that's LORAERICKSON. And thanks again for listening in. And until next time, live well.